6:17 call to order the finance committee. First order of business is committee reorganization. Chair, vice chair, and clerk.
I would like to nominate the present slate of finance committee officers.
All three being the same.
Yes, please.
Do we have a second? Is that how that works? For reorganization?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? Anyone else?
I would just a friendly clerk, maybe just name them, just for the record.
Yes. Yes, last year I was a secretary and I'm looking to take a year off from being a officer of the committee.
Okay. You wanna just name the three people that you're recommending? So that, as Austin just stated.
I would name, I would like to nominate Alec Moet. I can't nominate myself, guys.
Current slate is Alex as chair,
Right.
Darren as vice chair, and Pete as clerk.
Clerk.
Thank you, I can't.
You weren't nominating yourself, you're just naming what you were saying. I guess you are nominating yourself, actually.
Thank you
Why
for
can't
doing
you
that.
nominate yourself, technically speking?
So anyway, so now we gotta find another clerk who wants to sign up for that job.
I think Lynn looks like a great candidate for all that the clerk does. She would be a great starting place.
Are you nominating Lynn for clerk?
I am gonna nominate Lynn.
Is there a second?
Help us out, Karen, come on.
I'll
This is your
second
money.
it. Now, it depends on whether Lynn wants
That's
the
fine,
role or not.
that's fine.
There's not a lot to do.
No, that's fine.
From this side, there's
Can
nothing to do.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we then have, if we're gonna keep it all in the same motion, can Darren and Lynn just rescind their nomination for Pete as clerk? Cause it was initially for the original slate of people.
Could it
Or just
be an
amend it.
amendment? Yeah.
I'd like to amend, my nomination to Lynn Monica instead of,
Second.
Any other discussion on that? Is anyone opposed? Is anyone?
Here comes Tommy if you wanna wait a sec.
Oh boy. Tommy.
Hello, Tom. Why you said oh boy?
So it looks like you're gonna be chairman next.
And vice and clerk, all three.
And town administrator.
Oh, you're gonna be busy.
Congratulations.
And it comes with no pay. For you.
Used to
you
that.
know, all the grief you can get.
We're still gonna pay Austin, you just have to do the job.
But I'll still print all your paper for you.
So we have a nomination of Alex, myself, and Lynn as secretary, clerk, excuse me, secretary, clerk, for the next year.
It has been seconded, we're just open for discussion, or if anyone else has a nomination or anything of that nature. I don't know how I should open that. Or if I should say anything
Can I
else.
say something?
Oh, sure.
I second a nomination. Net nominations.
I think that would be a third.
Yeah, that was already seconded.
So you must be in favor of it.
All
Did you see
right,
the smile on his face when you did that?
that he's not clerk. All right, all those in favor of the nominations from Darren?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Why? I'm an aye.
Alright. Moving on then, new business. New business is gonna be the minutes, so the first one was the April 11th, which feels like forever ago.
Right.
Does does anyone have, can I get a, motion for the approval of the April 11th,
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve the Finance Committee meeting minutes as of April 11th,
11th, yep.
as documented.
Second? Cool. Second. Any discussion on these, any corrections, any modifications that need to be made?
Yeah, I can't remember back that far.
I know.
We did this a long time ago.
Alright, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes from April 11th?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and I think Ted's gonna abstain from that
I
one.
did.
Okay.
Do I have to say
For the
that?
re-
Or-
just cause
I
we all say it at
abstained.
the same time, maybe it's best to do that, just so that we know. Okay, I'm gonna abstain from anything on the May 11th, Darren, if you wanna take the May 11th over.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes from May 11th, which was also the town meeting, annual town meeting.
Second?
Any discussion or corrections on these? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the May 11th meeting minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alex abstains. All right, fund transfers, the fund transfers. Does everyone have copies of these? Everyone's got them, okay. All right, so. First one is, request for transfer from reserve fund, so this is, the only reserve fund transfer that should only be one, it is the amount of $4,790.76 for, to be transferred to account 001-151-5200, I'm not gonna be able to do it. Town council purchase services. Present balance in said appropriation is $3,001.04. The amount requested will be used for, to pay numerous invoices, doesn't really say what it's for.
That's at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Oh, for the bylaw review, okay. Sorry, I was reading the top looking for the, description.
Can anybody tell me where we're at for the bylaw review? Is that, we're good, bad, or indifferent?
Did you hear back anything?
So the clerk's office, from my understanding, has received approval with the only condition that it just needs to be posted properly for the bylaws to be in effect. But we did hear back and there were some comments on the bylaws, but all of them were approved.
Excellent.
But again, they're not official yet,
Till when?
until the clerk's office posts them.
So is this it for legal fees for them?
For bylaws, yes.
Yeah, it's not all for the bylaws, but that's a portion of it.
We hope.
So you said they came back with some comments?
Yes, and those will be posted as well. There's some comments on, they were like, well, how many chapters were there? There was some comments, pretty much on each of the chapters, depending on, because as you know, there were several bylaws lumped into each chapter.
But were there any comments like, well, maybe you shouldn't have said that, you should have said this, or, I mean, that's okay, but it would bend it.
Language corrections, you mean?
Yeah, some of that, but again, I think they, through home rule and, the Constitution, obviously, communities have more authority to be able to do things that aren't in conflict with those documents, so there were some, but again, none, strong enough for any rejection.
Yeah, obviously they approved them, and everything else is okay, so.
Yeah.
So just a note on this, the math doesn't math. So I don't know if we need to amend one of the amounts here. The amount requested plus the amount that's currently in the appropriation does not equal the total amount it says that's needed. It's off by $100. Yeah, that's fine, I just, do you know what number we need to amend on it, or correct? Should we, can we just do 4,890.76 on the amount requested, so we're just adding $100 to that? Does everyone see that amendment that I'm suggesting? On the amount requested,
$100.04.
increasing the amount requested by $100? No, 4 cents is fine, or should be fine, according to the amount in there.
I would do that, and if it's less,
Then it
it'll
just
flow to
goes
free
back.
cash.
Yeah. So we're just adding, so the amount requested is gonna change to 4,890.76.
So, and this is what we paid for legal services in a total of a year? How much is legal services for the town of Rutland in the course of the year?
You're saying the total for the year, $7,000?
No, he's asking the total
It's like
of the
3
year for the
months,
That's what I'm
town.
saying, the total for the year is way more than that.
Yeah, I'm guessing the total for the town's probably in the 50 to 60K range, right? Cause I think we budget about 40K for the town a year. And then this year, obviously, we're asking for more, so it's gonna be in the 50 to 50K range, somewhere around there. We could pull up Donna's most recent expense report, and we can
Yeah,
probably get that
it was
number.
budgeted
Although
for-
that's gonna be by department, so I'm not going through all that right now.
No, but it was budgeted for 43.4.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why we're doing this as a reserve fund transfer rather than transfer from another line item, a number of which are underspent?
No, there's no specific rationale why we went to finance committee, I mean, they're all general fund monies. I think the argument is that, we still have 1.5, maybe 2 more warrants to go, so those line items, that, to your point, may have some surplus in them, may be lowered a bit, so we're
Oh,
not
so
seeing
there's
any.
2 more to go?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because that was
Yep.
a future question that I was gonna have.
2 more
Two more to
warrants
go in this
for this
meeting.
fiscal year.
But fiscal year.
So should we
Oh, in this
take those
report.
others in order and put this one up back?
No, cause we're not, this is the only reserve fund transfer request for this year. Or for the remaining of this. We
So-
believe that we'll be able to, cover the remaining expenses in those budgets.
So, when do we budget
Don't
for the
say
reserve fund?
it's done, you never know. We've done them as late as July 15th.
25?
19.9.
That's what's in the reserve fund now?
That's what we budgeted?
The problem is that out of the 19.9, on April 11th, we transferred $3,400 out of reserve fund, and I don't see that affecting the statement.
So what was the total to start with, 25?
No, it looks like it was budgeted at 19.9 for the reserve fund
I mean,
transfer.
this is, I believe the budget, it says it's 19,959, and I don't see anything expended. And
No, I
on
know, but
April
does it-
11th, we expended $3,400.
Dropped to 10 to help.
No,
out.
so the way that it works, with Vadar, your original budget, and forgive me, let me just pull that up.
20% share was 25K.
Yeah, so
very
the existing reserve fund, the budget actually for FY '24 was 35,000.
Oh, 35.
So there's already been reserve fund requests throughout the year, so that's why it looks like the budget is only 19.9, because Donna already booked those to the previously approved reserve fund.
But why
requests.
doesn't that show in the expenditures?
Because it's not booked as an expenditure, it's essentially moving the
Moving the
budget
budget.
figure.
Yeah.
Which candidly I disagree with, but I'll have to talk to Donna about that.
But
because
it
doesn't
also
give-
says this reports from 7/1 of 2023 to 6/24 of 2024, and it says 19,959 is the budget.
Correct, as I just mentioned, the original budget, if we go back to the initial report from at the beginning of the fiscal year, you would have seen the 35,000 that was budgeted for FY '24. As you know, there were several, I can't remember the specifics from this year, those have already been booked to the other budgeted accounts.
So once you
the
make the transfer, you take it out of the fund
Correct.
budget, okay.
I don't like the way that's.
So
No, it's, to be honest, you're right, it's not
It's not
realistic.
transparent.
Right, it's not realistic and it doesn't
It's
actually
pretty
show.
common in nonprofit though. That's
it?
actually how nonprofit usually does.
Sure, that's how you
But-
slip it under the, so no one sees
But-
it.
But to your point, and especially I would agree with the process in terms of, as we're talking about budgeting for future years, we should be able to see what the activity of the reserve fund has been.
Well, the point of that is so you move the budget so you can see next year how much you budgeted, how much you was in the budget prior year, so that you can budget the same. So it has an increased amount basically. So it's not looking at the actual expenses as much as looking at the budget. So theoretically, it should work out to see the future years, but it doesn't. It really depends on how you're looking at
Well,
it.
and the challenge, Alex, is so when I was putting together the budget report, I was going back through, we have two different systems, right? So I'm looking back at SoftWrite and I went back to 21 and I would see lines that had exactly the amount budgeted to expended. Like, that doesn't look right, right?
Suspicious.
Because we know that, especially municipalities, budgets aren't always perfect. So I quickly learned, oh, okay, that's because they booked the transfers to that budget and expense line to perfectly match. So something I'm trying to work on to be a little bit more transparent for future years to fix that, but.
But at the end of the year, shouldn't we see I'm just using that 35,000 number you said. Shouldn't we see $35,000 budgeted and I'm just gonna use the number 42,000 or something expended? And there was a transfer
Yeah,
from
but-
reserve fund?
That's not the way the system works. is
Well,
what he's
yeah,
saying.
That's what he'd like to do.
We'll never be able to go over unless we transfer some from not one line to your reserve fund line, right? Cause we set the budget at the beginning of the year for FY '24, it was 35,000, and FY '25 it's 30,000, right? So, it can't be more than 35 for this year, cause we never transferred anything additionally into your line.
No, I understand that, but the 35,000 started at 35,000.
Yep.
Okay, so now you've got accounts, wherever they may be, you're taking money from the 35,000 and bringing it to that. Oh, but then that shows that budget, that line budget went up.
That's right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're moving, we're transferring
No, I understand,
budget
I
money.
understand
That's
that, yep. Okay,
It definitely can be.
you know what
messy.
I'm saying is, the original budget was $100, and we took $50 from reserve fund, so it should, original budget 100, now it should say we spent 150.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, we're over, not, I don't wanna say overspent, we
Yeah.
had,
So then if we asked for a budget to expense report that was detailed, we should be able to see the transfers in that line item, is that correct?
Yep, I'm getting it for you now, actually, so, posted 7/1, your initial budget was 35,000.
Yep.
Posted March 14th, the overall debit was 11,562, and that incorporated a $3,000 transfer, a $4,800 transfer, and a $37.62 transfer. Posted for April 11th was a $34.78 transfer, getting you to your 19,959.
But are those transactions in the expenses, in the expense report?
No, they just move it from
Right, it's a
that
journal-
budget
it's a
line to another
journal
budget
entry.
line, and you never see that.
No, I understand, but I don't think that's necessarily bad. You're reducing the money that's being requested for the reserve and saying that we didn't need it there, we put it someplace else. We
Yeah, I mean,
just
that's
know
kind of the
that-
point of a reserve fund, is it's
Yeah.
for the unforeseen expenditures,
Exactly.
which is also to Ted, your question, why we came to the Finance Committee Reserve Fund for the request. But also, I mean, all these had to be approved by you folks, so they are in your minutes for this year.
Theoretically, to me, the reserve fund is used or should be used for one-time expenses that are unforeseen to some degree. Obviously, this is kind of foreseen because we knew a lot of this bylaw stuff was gonna happen, right? But it is a one-time charge that is kind of outside of the regular town operations. So, I mean, to me, it is within the purview of what this is used for.
And not all of this is bylaw stuff. We have an estimated 874 for the remainder of June, which is regular stuff, so it's,
Yeah, some of it's town meetings, some we've had some, obviously some personnel stuff going on, so we had to utilize council services. And then our day-to-day work where we seek assistance from council, obviously, they don't work for free, so.
We ready for a motion?
Always, probably should have started with a motion.
Always. I'll make the motion that we accept the request for transfer from the reserve fund to the town council purchase services for $4,890.76.
Yep.
Second.
Any further discussion on this?
Yeah, so back to my very first question, what I started asking, so with all that said, so 19,929, and we're spending $4,900 now, so we're gonna be at, yeah, about, yep, well, within whatever number, right, so we got about 14, okay, all right, that was my question.
And hopefully, no more reserve fund, that's your contribution to free cash for this year.
Hey,
Maybe,
We're saving the town.
Yeah, that's right.
$14,000.
Okay,
I know where 14 would fit real good, but
I know, but.
That shirt off.
all those in favor of the motion on the table?
aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay. Alright, the next one is between departments. So it is a amount requested $16,337.00 to be transferred from 010-914-5100, which is health insurance, which has $183,500, to 010-916-5100, which is Medicare. So Medicare was underfunded for the year, in the amount of $1,137, and it looks like there's going to be a remainder of bills that need to get paid for Medicare that is causing the difference. So this is gonna take us through the rest of the year, correct?
Yes.
So why was Medicare, or do we have to vote first before we can talk about it?
We should have a motion though.
I'm gonna say it doesn't matter.
Okay.
We can talk.
so he needs, whoever this is, so Steve, 16,337 into the Medicare account.
Right.
So why is Medicare so far off? That's a pretty easy number to come up with based on your salaries.
Yeah, so just doing some quick math real quick for you. So there was, I believe, a mid-year adjustment for FY '23 utilizing ARPA, 15,000. So Becky, when putting together the Medicare budget for FY '24, increased the previous budget by 5%. Obviously, that wasn't sufficient. And I'm just doing some.
So they used ARPA funds to pay for 1 year, and then when they budgeted the next year, they didn't include the ARPA payment in the.
You take your salaries times 1.45% and you get to Medicare.
Clearly, she didn't budget
Yeah.
it that way, though.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of new hires that weren't taken into account. So my question is gonna be, is this happens a lot, has over the years. The same person was available to us for this year's budget. Did we have somebody different handle the Medicare budgeting this year so that it was done based upon actual salaries budgeted for the year?
Yep, so when we first learned about this, I made sure to tell Becky, well, let's fix it for FY '25. So you'll recall in the FY '25 budget, we actually budgeted $99,164. Now, I ran some of the numbers based off of our projected payroll for FY '25. The budget for FY '25 should be just about 90,000, so we do have some additional capacity in there for.
A little cushion.
So it wasn't necessarily done line by line, making sure that, different positions are gonna change. We've got some changes coming, many changes coming in this town, so.
Well, I think we have a better handle, that's a great question, I think we have a better handle of the payroll, we definitely, I think, looked at the payroll certification worksheet to make sure that, one, payroll is accurate, because I think that was something we did notice this year was, the different working hours, we've got that additional one working day, which as you know, can, when you're spending, $6 million on payroll, that can have a pretty substantial impact.
And it has been forgotten in the past, that's why I brought it up.
So we make sure that, the payroll for FY '25 is, exactly to the 2088 working hours.
Great.
Obviously, it's a little different for public safety, so we worked with their departments, made sure the overtime was calculated to that. So we're pretty confident in the payroll figures for all of our 5-1 accounts. And then, obviously, as you know, from that, it's doing the deduction of the calculation of the 1.45% to get the Medicare, so.
Because what she did was exactly what the schools prior to the new administration used to do, just take the budget and up it by 5%. And that leaves plenty of holes and I just wanna make
Especially
sure
with
that we're not.
Medicare increases, cause there was a pretty substantial Medicare increase this last year too. Oh, no, that was just in the total, it was in the max.
There was no, the
Percentage
percentage
change.
hasn't changed.
But the max changing would increase the total amount that gets paid though.
Is it still 1.45%?
Medicare is 1.45.
Yeah, but it's up to 160, oh, we don't have a lot of people.
Make a motion to pay this, or let's transfer this.
Do we have a second?
Second.
That's the 16,337.
Correct. Coming from health insurance, which that's just over, cause we have a lot of people that didn't take health insurance and anticipated and all that jazz, people leaving transfers. All those in favor of approving this transfer?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay. The next one is $2,206.89 to be transferred from 010-122-5700 Select Board Other Charges. There is currently $2,269.07 to be transferred to town phones. 010-156-5200, which is currently under by $168.91. So it'll have to cover the deficit for the rest of the year.
I make a motion that we approve the transfer of $2,206.89.
How many phones does the town pay for?
At Summit, I don't know how many, but DPW have phones, folks in public safety, and then a handful in general government. But again, the total amount of phones, I don't have the top of my head. I think just a quick overview of this one, I think we had a change in vendor, which also came with a change of price that was not accounted for with this. We also had a department head that unknowingly was incurring overage charges on their account, which we fixed mid-year with the vendor, and obviously worked with the employee to make sure that they don't do that anymore, or that wouldn't be possible. So this was something that we figured was coming, we just didn't have the total number, so this, we believe, is a accurate accounting of what the remaining bills for FY
We have a,
Didn't we do this last year too for the phones?
Darren, if I may, this is for the office phones as well. This is for the whole town-wide,
so do
system.
we, in lieu of some of the things that I've been watching on TV, do we have a phone use policy that has been given out to everybody? Does everybody know what they're supposed to do and they signed it off with the HR person?
Yeah, so there is an existing electronic use policy that was covered, I think, from 2018. And then the most recent personnel policies that were approved by the select board have some updates, and those will be shared with staff in the coming days as well. But there is already something that's covered in
Okay,
there.
so we're covered now?
We've been covered, but we have an updated policy as well.
You said a change of vendor, what vendor did we change?
I believe it was called, there were some accounts that for some reason, I don't know why, were with a company called Granite. And they ended up moving all of those lines over to our Verizon account, and that increased the Verizon bill.
Do
So
we
this
need-
account covers, there's a chart on the back, but Crocker Communications is for all of the office phones. AT&T Mobility is for the cell phones for the individual department heads that have them. AT&T covers, I think, the library, cause there's also a couple of fax lines that we still utilize as well, that we get charged for. We have one fax line at town hall and one fax line here at the library.
do we know which lines were with Granite that now got moved to Verizon?
I don't remember specifically off the top of my head. One of them was definitely from the library. But I don't remember what the other one was, cause this was probably like 8 or 9 months ago that it happened.
And we knew at that time when we switched that there was gonna be a price increase? No, we
We
didn't.
didn't know that they were going to switch. We didn't know that Granite was going to reach out to us and say, hey, we wanna get these lines put onto Verizon. We didn't know it until it happened.
They just moved them without our input?
Right, or approval.
Is that what happened? They just moved them over to Verizon and just said, that's it?
No, they got our approval to do it, but we didn't know that it was coming. And it happened after the budget had already been approved for FY '24. So they had reached out via email and basically said, hey, we still have these couple straggler accounts. We'd like to have you move them over to Verizon. So then we worked with Verizon to get those accounts moved over. But in turn, that increased our Verizon bill from what we had been paying, which is what was used to budget for FY '24.
And who was paying the Granite bill?
I don't know which department was paying that. I'm guessing it was probably the library because I'm pretty sure it was for one of their fax lines. Cause that was not something that was paid through our office. But now the Verizon bill in totality is paid from the town phone line.
I second Pete's motion.
So if the Verizon bill went up, then did something else from somewhere else go down because it was moved to the Verizon bill?
Correct, we no longer contract with Granite for those accounts that we have.
Right, but there was something budgeted to pay them something.
Yes, but I don't know from whose department it was budgeted from.
They won't be paid next year.
But Donna should be able to tell us who paid Granite last year and what department it went to.
Right.
I'm just, I'm looking through emails now, it's building department fax, water fax, mush lines from fire, a handful from recreation. Candidly, I think that it looks like something that Granite had reached out to town staff and said, hey, it looks like there were a handful of lines that were mistakenly transferred to Granite, and then they worked internally and then reached out to notify us that that they were going to move back to Verizon. Looks like our partners at the state helped us get caught that we were accidentally with Granite. Something about Mass Department of Developmental Services consolidation project. And then they identified that our lines were mistakenly still with Granite, so.
Okay, you said one of the lines was with recreation. Are we billing from the town to the revolving fund for that fee?
Yeah, so Recreation does pay for their costs associated with phone and fax service.
So now that we've moved it over to Verizon, they're paying the increased rate.
I don't know the specifics of that purchase services, but I assume that when they get their bills, they cover those in there.
But now we're paying them on a Verizon bill that goes through the town phone line. So we should be billing the revolving fund for those expenses.
So we do, there's, not all of the indirect costs from the revolving fund just cover, like things like health insurance or Medicare. There's, I think, similar to dispatch in there, the way that they do their billing, there's a little bit of other services that are charged in the indirect cost accounting. I can get you the detail of what exactly the indirect cost accounting is.
I just wanna make sure that now that we've moved it to this new line, that the town isn't incurring more expenses that recreation is benefiting from, because that's the purpose of a revolving fund.
It's reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we, as of the FY '25 budget, we are sure that it is all budgeted correctly going forward.
No, it's not. I think we're gonna have to do a mid-year adjustment. The budget for FY '25, actually matches FY '24. So we'll have to take a look and either do right away.
Get rid of some fax machines.
Yeah.
I know they keep it here at the library as a service to the residents. And they keep it at town hall because believe it or not, there's still a couple of vendors out there, cause I asked, cause I said, people still fax? And there's actually a couple of vendors through the treasurer collector's office that will only accept a fax because email is not secure.
It's the most secure data transfer.
Email?
No, faxes.
Yep, faxes.
Taxes.
I'm
You
sorry,
do it for free.
faxes.
You go to the pharmacy and they charge you.
Go to the library, they charge you.
Yeah, I'd be
Oh, they do?
curious
They
to
charge
see
you?
how many,
Yeah.
how much.
Oh, some guy came to the annex and I was the fool that did it for free for him.
What do you want, glue?
I know. God.
I'd be curious to see how much this fax machine actually gets used, cause that's,
Antiquated?
it may not be worth, having a line for, but something to look into. Okay.
So,
Whilst you have
Going
voice
back to
over
what I was
IP, it
asking,
comes
so-
electronically.
if you're gonna look in those other things, so they moved over to Verizon and we're paying more, we need to pay more there. There's still, to me, there's still some other account somewhere back a step. They had money budgeted to pay whatever was getting paid.
Unless the rates went up.
Well, there's still money there.
So there's gotta be money somewhere that won't be
started.
spent for this after this transfer.
But in fairness, it's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of the other, so whether we transferred the money from the account I'm proposing versus taking it from that other account, one or the other account is gonna fall to free cash, whichever one has money left over.
Well, if they don't use it, but if they can spend it on something else, and that's, cause there's a number of times we sit here and we add money in, cause we're short on something, we add money here, but we don't see where the money that was supposed to be spent and that has gone to something else, so that's the reason I'm asking.
I think the bigger concern is what Karen was concerned with, is making sure that any revolving fund that should be paying for these is, they're not saving or being unfairly, accounted for something like this. So I think if we verify that none of the revolving funds are being underbilled, then that is, that's sufficient to me.
There's no question that
And
the
enterprise funds too.
There's no
just to be
question that
fair.
where they're getting used, it should be paid for, but the other side of that coin is what I'm saying is, where there was money budgeted for it and it's not being used for it, that should be also known also.
Because now we know that we were paying Granite, we should have been told on here, we were paying Granite, it was being paid from this
X.
line, this line, this line, and this line, and now it's being paid from this line. Because then that way you can walk back through to see where everything is, so that we should see some free cash flowing from some of those expenses as well, in theory.
Sure, I totally agree. I mean, I'm not micromanaging every department head's year-to-date spending worksheets. I think what I've been trying to do for a couple of months now is talk to departments about, instead of an end-of-the-year spending spree, we need to force some free cash, some turn back. So, I think it's very clear to departments that select board and finance committee and the greater public are interested in, what the year-end surplus will be. But again, departments have their day-to-day operational needs. And in this case, we do have a shortfall in this account, and we're just respectfully asking for the request.
I think, I don't disagree with the sentiment behind what you guys are saying, finance committee is saying, but I also think we need to recognize the amount of money that's being addressed here. If this was, $200,000, I think where it's coming from and where it's going is far more important than $2,000. By department, I mean, by every single line that it's being affected from.
And last year we moved some money into that account, so we're just trying to make sure, I know for me, I'm trying to make sure that we're putting into place the things so that the budget starts being,
And it sounds like, unfortunately, we're not again,
Right,
right?
exactly.
So, but
Exactly.
we've made that point, we've asked for that to be addressed in FY '25, we've made that, so I think we've done what we can, the amount of money being requested here is not huge, so, there's a motion on the table. It's been seconded, any other discussion on this topic before we call to a vote? Okay, all those in favor of approving the, fund transfer as presented?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I think the last one, it is, so $2,500 from 010-914-5100, which again is health insurance, going to 10-159-5400, which is postage, so it's $2,500 for postage,
So the sheet on the back should say
Say
postage rather
postage
than
instead of
Medicare.
Medicare, there's a typo.
Yeah, that is a typo.
The account number is correct, but the
Yeah.
Make a motion, we approve the request as presented.
Second.
And is this just due to additional bills going out?
Excise.
Yeah, there's some excise. We did obviously have the special election, for former Senator Goby's seat that, were unanticipated costs of the postage budget. Obviously, there was a stormwater billing that, not sufficient resources in the existing budget. Obviously, for next year, we'll bill that to the Stormwater Enterprise Fund.
Okay.
But yeah, just more postage and to be candid, I mean, for a $30 million organization, this is a pretty light postage budget with all the things that are going on and multiple departments using it. $20,000 is pretty low in my opinion. So I think looking for future fiscal years, we may have to boost that up a little bit to make sure that they're sufficient. The good thing about that is the postage machine doesn't expire at June 30, so when you put in the money, it stays in there, so if you guys wanna add a 0 to that, future years, I'm kidding, but
Again, how much is really being mailed?
a lot, a decent amount. I mean, you think of all the bills that you guys thankfully received, I mean, that counted against our postage, so.
You're required to send those by mail too, right? Yeah, that's what I thought, okay.
Yeah, so we've got, now 3 utilities, we've got the real estate, we've got all the ballots, which includes, the mail-in ballots, so.
But some of that we get back from the
elections there.
state, correct?
We get some, it's not a sufficient
And we
amount.
and we're billing the postage to the water and sewer enterprises for the water and sewer,
It
so I
will
mean,
be,
some
but we
will,
didn't for
yeah.
this year, right?
we should be.
I mean, it doesn't, we do bill some of the purchase services for that. And then some of that is covered through just overall indirect costs, but again, it's still a pretty light budget for the amount of stuff that's going in and out of that office. It also just covers some of our general government mailings as well.
Yep, and it's going up again.
Yep. Alright, did we have a motion on that in a second? Okay. Any other discussion on this? I think this is pretty straightforward and
Excuse me.
Are you supposed to wake up?
Supposed to take my medicine.
You know that by now, I know that.
all those in favor of this $2,500 transfer request as presented?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright, those are the interdepartmental transfers. The next one is gonna be the Recreation Department, which is a request to increase FY '24 spending limit. Does somebody wanna take the floor on that one? I don't know who's in charge of that.
Yeah, sure, I can cover it, so, the, Recreation Revolving Fund is respectfully asking for, or Director responsible for the revolving fund is asking for, an increase which requires both Select Board and Finance Committee approval of their, revolving fund under 53.5. Simply due to the fact that some of the obligations, we had a change in some of our purchasing policies that required purchasing from vendors that have a little bit higher expenditures, but also some of the equipment at the pool, more specifically, the pool pump is in need of replacement. Estimated cost is around $12,000 for that. The repair has not been completed yet, but she's estimating around $12,000 for that repair. Thankfully, the revolving fund does very well in terms of revenue to cover its expenditures. So there's sufficient revenues already and fund balance already to cover this requested increase. And then just for next year, we did, as you recall from town meeting, we did increase the revolving fund spending cap to just over $250,000.
So this is all coming from the revolving, nothing's coming from general fund.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the balance of their account? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I can get that for you right now. So this is not current, this is revenue as of, this is just the quickest one I could pull up for you, revenue as of end of February, their balance was.
We have a ton of revenue that comes in March and April.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
Yeah,
like telling
but-
me, oh, last February, you know,
Yeah,
a year
but
ago,
just remember, they
February,
had
that's-
but just remember, they already had fund balance of 207. And then they had some expenditures during the year through February, but their fund balance was 167. To your point, they just added additional revenue from the camp fees, from the pool passes.
Could we ask Donna that when she does the budget to expense things, that she includes the revolving funds on those as well?
Sure.
We used to get them from Dan that way, because in that way we can see also where they are throughout the year and we
Yeah,
catch it.
so the way that it's booked in Vadar is they actually don't show, for the revolving funds, they don't show a budget to actual for that, because.
There is no budget.
Correct.
Yep.
Which for me, it's a little challenging, cause I'm trying to figure out exactly where things should be, but the overall, she just puts the overall spending cap. So it doesn't show a clear picture of, okay, where are you tracking for your purchase services or supplies?
Yeah, but it'll show what came in and what went out, so at least we can see. So I just think if that was included with what we're looking at, we could actually see. I know it hasn't been in years, but we have had way in the past, we have had an issue that we almost had to hit that fund with general fund money. Cause we're very close to overspending, so.
Can you go back to what you, 229, the balance was what? Or the amount was?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question, just as.
What was the fund balance?
You said that you had, the latest one you had was
Oh, yeah.
I said 229, you
Oh.
said end of February.
Yeah, end of February. So the.
I think this is 29 days.
Revolving, the fund balance as of end of February was 166, just over 166,000, 166,475. In the director's memo, she's got a little bit, more revenue than I, looks like for her, she budgeted 244 in revenue. Her calculation as of the end of May was 279,000 in the,
Yep.
here.
Okay, so down the bottom here, revenue, it says 244 is 960.
Yep.
And then it says total to date as of May, end of May, it says 279,551. They gotta add 34,000, or is
That
that,
was additional revenue.
that was the 34, but, okay,
So
so the
over budgeted revenue.
okay, but they're only asking for 27.
Correct. So there still will be a net surplus in the
Okay,
budget to actual.
and then I'm assuming next year, the requested expense will not be, still, it won't be as high as adding all these up, because obviously the pool pump, that's a pretty big number. That would be back out of that next year.
So why wouldn't we, if we don't contribute anything to it in that general budget, why wouldn't we just put it at $300,000, and if they get to it, they get to it? Who cares? Why do we?
Some communities do that. I mean, it seems like Rutland budgets to the penny on everything.
Yeah, but why do we care? They can't spend.
I don't
They
disagree with you.
overspend, it comes out of the general fund.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
it's
so,
just a-
but to your
Yeah,
point,
but-
Darren, you have to provide, more so to the Department of Revenue, you have to, demonstrate on the tax recap. You do have to report something on revolving funds, and you just have to show that there's sufficient revenue to support that. Similar with our enterprise funds.
They could overspend today, they could overspend 5 years from now, there's no way to stop that.
Yeah, there is.
Well,
We
Austin
have
could
to
do-
see it.
Yeah, you have to show either you're gonna bring it
Yeah,
in
but
through
why-
programs and fees or,
So that they
use
don't.
fund balance.
I understand it, but. Alright, I guess, I don't know what it matters. If they can only spend what they have in their accounts, why would it matter? They can overspend it, if we move this number to 300, they could overspend 300, or they can overspend 279, 550.
If we say 300, then that's the number they can go, and if they go over, like Karen said, then it's over.
Yeah, but they can still go over 279.
I don't think they can go over 279.
Well, they shouldn't.
on our annual budget, would it count against the 2.5?
Don't quote me on this, I don't believe enterprise funds hit the tax rate,
Shouldn't.
no, I don't believe revolving funds do, enterprise funds do, so if we had an issue with our water, sewer, stormwater, that could affect our tax rate setting process. And would require a subsidy from the general fund.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. Alright,
More postage.
yeah.
Do we have any, do we get a motion? We get a motion on this, no? Can I get a motion on the requested increase of $27,000?
I make a motion that we approve the increased limit as requested, $27,000.
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of increasing the spending limit for recreation, $27,000?
Aye.
Any opposed? That was everything that we had tonight. Do we have anything in the other category that anyone would like to bring up or talk about at this point?
I think a comment, one question that I did wanna bring up, I think was answered by Austin. When I looked at the report from Donna that came yesterday, there was some significant underspendings in some of the departments, but you say there's gonna be 2 more billings
Two
of
more
that.
warrants, yeah.
So probably a lot of that gets used up and we're not gonna be sitting back here doing this
No,
in another month.
Some,
I think we're tracking to have a pretty good year in terms of turn back. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to subtly get away from the year-end spending spree that I think has happened in years past, obviously because of different budget conditions. But we didn't decrease anyone's supplies and services line items, so do we, need to buy, just for example, an extra set of tires for something? Because there isn't a fear that, we're gonna have less of a supplies
Or
budget next year.
25 toner cartridges to put in the back.
Right. So we're working with departments to make sure. There's obviously some that have had some, there's some that you can see, for example, the treasurer collector's line item was depleted with the retirement of Becky, right? So we had to make some adjustments there, but, if we're on average tracking around, let's say 250 plus or minus in, warrant expenditures, we could have, and this is just very early, you'll see, and you'll get a report, once we close out the fiscal year. I think we'll have a pretty good, turn back amount, and then obviously, looking at our revenues, but I think we'll at least replenish what we took out from free cash, and then anything additional will just be extra money for you guys to consider spending.
Okay.
So, thinking down the road a little bit, have we started thinking on what we're gonna set in your budget planning process for like a Wachusett Regional High School amount? Like what you think is gonna be coming in free cash, and do we have any penciled in deficit moving forward? I know we had one we thought we were gonna have, but has that grown, or what are you forecasting for Wachusett right now?
So for
Or
FY
the schools,
FY
excuse me.
26, I put in, this was the plan that was presented at town meeting as well. I put an 8% increase on the Wachusett, so obviously that's early. Probably gonna be higher. Bay Path, I put in 10% for an increase.
And
So
they were 8 and something last year, right?
they were, for FY 25, they were 7.42, and Bay Path was 21.55. Now remember, the 21.55 was pretty significant, but the year before, it was a loss of like 13 students, so it was negative 13.45, so we essentially got those students back and some. So that was a pretty big swing. So I just put in 10 to be conservative, and then obviously with some discussion with you folks, maybe we can change those numbers.
So what is your estimated deficit for next year?
So with all things considered, these assumptions now, before I give you that number, I just wanna also note, sorry, it's a political answer of me, a non-answer. Remember, we budgeted, for FY '25, we only budgeted $400,000 in new growth, being conservative. I can say with confidence it'll be well over $400,000 for FY '25, which adds to our overall levy. I think that there's some tools that I'd like to talk to you folks about in the future about maybe do we reduce the free cash use amount for FY '25, but we'll talk about that. However, let's just assume that it's $400,000. The projected deficit for FY '26 is 1.3 million.
And that's at 8 for Wachusett.
That's at 8 for Wachusett, 10 for Bay Path.
And can you easily put in instead of 8, 10 at Wachusett?
Can, just 1 second.
And tell me what it would be.
2 more percent.
1.7.
1.7.
But does that include the structural deficit that we have with this year's budget?
It does. So, let's just assume, let's pull out, because I don't wanna just pull out free cash, I also wanna assume that we're gonna be able to book that new growth. So I'm gonna put in 600,000 in new growth and reduce the use of, or I'll just go down to 50,000 in free cash. 1.5 million would be next year's deficit, so slightly reduces it a little bit.
It's gonna take a little bit of work.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly brings up the conversation about starting the conversation about override at this point.
I don't
Yeah.
wanna get beat up for a while. We are gonna get beat up. But I understand the problem.
Oh, we knew it was gonna come. We knew this last
Oh,
year.
yeah.
It's not a surprise.
So if we just use 1.5, Austin. What do we really, I don't know if you wanna say this politically, but what are we gonna need?
12 million.
12 million?
Well, the schools are gonna come back looking for some capital work, I would almost guarantee.
They kinda
As they
told us
said that they were
coming.
going to, so.
Depending on what happens with the state funding still with the
So
schools.
1.5 is probably on the conservative side in some aspects. Really just from Wachusett of what they're gonna ask for in capital. Yeah, go ahead.
If I may, Austin, I think Paxton failed their override,
Yeah.
the second go around. And we know that, at least Holden and Sterling were talking about needing to look towards an override in the foreseeable future. So I don't know if it makes sense to try to have a concerted an intentional collaborative conversation with the schools to see if all the towns are going to be looking for something in the next 1 to 5 years to be a little bit more inclusive of the schools, but also similar to what Shrewsbury did or something, a larger multi-year,
That may not get used right away.
right.
Good luck with that, kid.
Well,
I'd start wearing a bulletproof vest.
So, I mean, the other side.
Not in the budget. Sorry, Nick.
The other side of this is that we're anticipating a request in November to, what is that fund that we're,
CPA.
The CPA?
yeah,
that's-
CPA, thank you.
I can't go towards
So
budget.
we're taking that to the town in November. And so we're gonna ask the town to pay an increased amount of money there.
3%.
And then we're gonna go back and we're gonna ask them to add some more in the 2.5 override. I'm with Darren, I'm not really anxious to be able to be in a conversation with anybody about, what it's costing to run the town.
I think we're gonna get killed on an override again.
Well, before we get there, I do agree that maybe it's a special meeting where we're just talking about financial planning, so I'm already starting It's very early. I'm starting to put together, what will also be incorporated into the budget book, but revenue manual that goes into detail about most, if not all, of our revenue line items to show trends and projections for us to discuss. And then I think we compare that with the multi-year model and have a discussion. Now, obviously you can always look at expenses, but we've got to identify some revenue opportunities. So there is a proposed legislation at the state level that provides for some, it's not gonna balance our budget, but it provides for some revenue opportunities for communities.
And going back to the taxpayers?
Yeah.
For the state, oh, good.
Yeah, no, that was interesting. So at the MMA conference, those were proposed, and I looked at a town administrator next to me and I said, are you gonna do it first or am I? Cause again, it's essentially going back and asking people, it's like, one of them is proposing slightly increasing the meals tax. They're all local options. But again, we gotta look at expenses, but again, we do need to also identify new revenue sources. It was one of the comments, actually in my performance review was you need to identify revenue sources. So, and, I just wanna make it clear that, the town of Charlton has a $500 million Amazon facility that's being built. That's gonna provide about $1 million in tax revenue. But do you imagine a $500 million Amazon facility coming here? So we essentially need $500 million in new growth to get us $1 million.
But I'm sure Amazon got a pilot for that too, for a couple
I'm sure they
years.
did, yeah.
I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
that. I mean, they're smart. They know how to
Oh, yeah.
get it for nothing for a few years.
But just
Jeff
being,
is
like, I just
smart,
wanna
I think.
demonstrate, I
Land
mean,
for that.
the Heights property, 140 some odd units at the value of whatever is, $400,000 or $500,000, let's say. I hate to say only.
Gone yet? Sold? Is there any
I saw they
occupied?
built one.
Yeah, so there's, I think there's maybe 3 or 4.
There's 4 buildings there and another
And
foundation.
there's foundations, so.
But the electricity isn't even up there yet.
Yeah, so there's,
Okay.
the assessor's office has been up there fairly routinely actually, because there are certain milestones during the construction process where we can start putting it on the tax rolls. So it's within the construction phase, obviously it's not 100% of the value. But we have already incorporated that into some of our new growth calculations already for next year. So of that, round about 600, give or take, that does include some of the Heights in there.
Yeah, because they won't have 144 units in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
It's
So
gonna
if
be-
we're gonna
it's
sell
be out
another
further than
override,
that.
we can't wait to get the budget until when we got the budget this year.
You got the budget earlier than you've ever gotten it.
I'm saying we need to start selling it well in advance, because if we're doing this again 1 year after we already sold it, we need to start selling it early. And that's the thing. I'm not saying you, I'm saying more the school.
Oh, yeah.
The school has gotta get their butts in gear and get us that budget sooner than they've gotten it.
I agree with you.
Because the thing is, we
Absolutely.
can't wait till the end of March to get that number.
Yeah.
That doesn't help any of us try to sell it. Or we need to start getting the point where we move our town meeting. Princeton moved theirs because they couldn't get theirs done. So we might have to start thinking about that sooner than later, instead of waiting until the last minute and then go, we
Yeah.
gotta get going, and we can't get people to show up.
So that the budget presentation from the schools, Lynn, you were there with me, Leah, you were there. That was the comment I made was, we need to figure out a different process and timeline for this. We need to get this earlier. All 5 towns pretty much were already done with their budget planning, and then we got that number, right? Which for this year was a pretty substantial number in the discretional increase. So I do agree. I can say, the monthly meeting that we have with the superintendent, we had one this week, and he was the one who actually proposed the idea of doing some sort of financial retreat late summer, early fall to talk about where they think they're gonna be. I am optimistic that, especially because we've all raised that the coming years are not good for us, all of us, even Holden.
But you can't just hit up the superintendent, because it's not
Yeah,
just
no,
him.
Michelle will be there and the
No,
finance
no,
team.
the
school
everyone.
The school committee.
Oh, I agree.
You gotta get them on board, because they're the ones that can push. They're our representatives. They need to understand the importance
They've
that,
been pushing.
I think they need to understand that we need this like the latest, the end of January, not the end of March.
Well, we've been talking every year for as long as I can remember. We need to really get a little sooner, I guess the general is we just gotta get started a little sooner if we can. Every time when something's happened, it's pushed us backwards. It always happens.
So, go ahead,
No,
Pete.
so I guess my only comment here would be is that we're anticipating a deficit problem of $1.5 million. I think the conversation is we need to start talking about an override. And I'm just wondering if in the conversation, we shouldn't be, especially in the budget request cycle, that we don't start prepping the department heads for the reality that as much as we may think that we're going to go ahead and get some money out of a 2.5 override, may not, likely won't. And they need to start thinking about what, I don't wanna say puts them out of business, but what's the numbers that would be the realistic numbers for a budget if they have to come to it. It's not, it's not something that we say, doom and gloom, this gotta get done, we gotta cut. But we've gotta, I like to be able to feel confident that the numbers represent what their real needs are. And they're not just, like you said, at the end of the year, we get 5 tires more or 75 cartridges because the money's there. I think we're going to have the conversation about.
I think we've been trying to mold the school district for years, as long as anybody can remember. They have never been able to do anything with them. Maybe 1 or 2 years they went, oh yeah, we'll slow down here or there. Someone's gonna have to change my mind to tell me that if we're going upside down by $1.5 million because of the schools again, to stand anywhere and promote this. I'm not gonna be negative publicly, but I am not gonna go to the mat again. We took a good beating, we got them. We got an override, but you talk to anybody nowadays and they're like, we're
Where did that money go?
yeah, but where did the money go, number one? And then we said another override's coming at the town meeting, people like, are you
Well, the other thing that comes in is that we have to do what nobody wanted to do this year, which is like Paxton did this year. This is if you pass it, this is what happens if you don't.
Like we did last year.
Not last year, the year before.
Yeah, we did
Yeah.
it 2 years ago.
So the thing is, that's what you gotta do. You've gotta put it out there, and look, it still didn't pass.
Yeah, but is it our responsibility?
Not ours.
No. It's his responsibility, but is it our responsibility as a finance committee to go to the town and rah, and override when we have been trying for years to slow down school growth and they don't care?
Or do you have to get all the towns together and go after the school?
Yeah.
Well, we
Push
have to
the
do
school.
what we think is best as a finance committee, whether that
We have to do what we think
is,
we should advise the people to do.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right, but I mean, are we gonna be, just go down the primrose path again for $1.5 million?
Well, I think
That's
we
what
gotta
we
do
think is
something with the
best.
schools.
I
We've been
don't
saying
think
it for years, but I don't know what the answer is.
Well, I think.
Last year was supposed to be a correction year, because I questioned that way back, and they said next year will maybe be able to slow down a little bit, but I think it doesn't look like it's gonna happen.
It's not gonna.
But they've said the same things years and years and years before
That's what I'm
that.
going with, so are we gonna
Absolutely.
continually, as a finance committee, support an override thing?
I don't know
for
what the
school?
answer is. I only do know.
The only reason we're where we're at is because of schools.
If you read in the papers, there's a number of towns that have voted the school budgets down.
Yeah.
Look at
Because
what-
it's the
look at
same
what
thing, they're
Worcester's
out of
doing right
control.
there.
So there's a lot of schools
Yeah.
out there right now that are laying off a lot of teachers because
huge.
So about the only thing I can say is, Austin, you've got
To pressure the schools.
You've got to pressure the school committee members. We have, what, 3 of them?
We're down to 3.
Well, so my only, I don't think
I
it's
see
appropriate for me, in my position, to pressure elected officials.
No, but you
Yeah.
need to tell them. Because I think when we're sitting in those meetings and whenever we actually sit down with them, which is what usually April sometime.
Why don't we ask them in for a meeting?
There you
That's the thing.
go.
I think we need
Early.
to see, hey,
Let's-
listen, here's where we're at, and we need you guys to understand, we need to move faster on this, we need to understand this.
If we start something at the end of the summer and Austin has some projections, and we have a little meeting, we should have the school committee
September,
request them,
October timeframe.
request them to come in September and say, hey,
Yeah.
here's where we're at, guys.
School committee and the superintendent and Michelle, the business manager,
And
so
then-
that they all understand where we're at. I know that you guys do that at your monthly meetings, I'm not saying you don't, but it might help to,
Their school
again.
went down by, one town voted it down this last time. And there was another town that was very, very, very close, so. And we could have voted it down if we changed the budget amount by $10 in the meeting. And that may be a strategy we have to think of as a finance committee to reassess the school budget by dropping our appropriation number under there by $10. It's all has to be, it could be $5.
Well, so maybe we should be in a position to be able to come up with a number that we feel is a legitimate number for the school and present it to the administrators and to the school committee and say, this is where we are, this is what you have to be able to find a way to be able to get to. If you can't, then our board's recommendation to the town will be not approve the town budget.
If it went up by, can you put in your calculator 2%, please, 2.5?
the one thing that they're excellent at is getting the word out
Yes.
of, look at what's gonna happen, and we can't do that same thing. So the thing is they say, well, we're gonna have to cut foreign languages, we're gonna have to cut music, we're gonna have to cut this, we're gonna have to cut that. They've done this so many times that we, they get it out there and
And they're talking to the
That's the
voters.
bottom line, and it's there.
to the parents, yeah.
They're talking to the
that's a bottom
voters who
Yep.
happen to be
You
parents.
got it.
But that's also assuming.
And they go
do
ahead
that
and
with free
they do
cash.
that, and that's fine, let them go ahead and
good.
do that. Then it becomes those people
That's
that
still assuming
vote for
big
that,
exactly.
we should be asking them for the override.
So,
Which
You know?
theirs is not
So
discretionary, so we
Austin
don't
just put in
place in that.
2.5% for the school.
Yep.
And the number came to 479,
463.
463.
Total, that's the bottom line deficit.
That's the bottom line deficit, yeah.
Yeah, just
And we
clarify.
There's no way that's gonna happen.
No.
That
No,
would be
no,
like,
no.
that would be like Christmas and losing all the weight, like going like that, that doesn't happen.
You know, what's interesting, so, I promise at some point I'll stop talking about my previous community, but
Experience.
it's starting to get a little old.
Yeah, it's
But,
If you don't stop, you might be talking about Rutland.
yeah, right, yeah.
Hopefully, gets off her phone and pays attention.
Well, no, so it's interesting, so our interim treasurer collector, he was the finance director in Acton, and he said, we do something really unusual. We do financial planning with our neighbor. And I've talked about it numerous times, but quite literally, Acton, Boxborough, and Acton-Boxborough Regional School District would meet monthly because they all know it was, 60% of our expenses here are Wachusett, 60% of expenses in Acton and Boxborough were
Yeah.
AB school district.
We have done that.
Yeah, well, but they
We
meet
have.
monthly and they talk about, all right, Superintendent Light, I think it is. If you're here, this is what it's gonna do to us, right? So, I mean, that's a little bit more challenging with 5 communities, 5 finance
I was gonna
committees.
say,
and, But it's not impossible, right?
Not
I mean,
impossible, is correct.
no.
Gotta start somewhere.
We have done it in the past,
Yeah.
and we have gotten an alliance, and it has helped us. And then you have the other towns, you're like, oh, no, we wanna pay more, we wanna pay more, we wanna put more, we wanna put more, and all that, so.
Yeah.
And then you get well, we don't wanna make waves. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't try, I'm just saying that we have done this in the past,
it does
trying to
take a
work.
commitment from all parties,
Yeah.
and especially, well, Rutland and Holden are, what are we, excuse me, that's poison ivy. 40 or 50% of enrollment. Yeah, if not a little bit more. So we are I'd say it like this, but the
We are the
largest
lion's
contributors.
share of the.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So even if it was Rutland and Holden in some sort of participation to do that, but I do think that
I
it
think
would
we
be.
gotta stick with the smaller ones that are more challenged, cause they usually put a bond in faster
Yeah.
than Holden, cause Holden always seems to squeak something out.
Yeah,
in my
but even
opinion.
Holden is using more reserves this year to balance the budget than ever.
Yeah.
And they're up against it with the tax levy, and I
It's
think.
gonna come around here
Yeah,
for
it's
these
coming
guys.
around.
Sterling finally, when we begged them to help us, they didn't wanna do it. Now, guess
I wanna
what?
make waves.
So can I make a motion that we arrange a meeting, as we just talked about, in the September timeframe with all the appropriate people?
After Labor Day, yeah, it would be
Yeah, after
perfect.
Labor Day. But whenever it can be done in September, or school committee, the school senate, whatever, whoever else should be there.
And we can have those numbers, those 2.5 number, the 8 number, the 10
I
number.
gotta have something, it's.
We can have those numbers to fight them a little bit.
Right.
I'll second Tommy's motion.
Okay.
Is the select board spokesman have anything to say about this?
Did you know you
I'm
were
not
this?
speaking, I'm not here on behalf of the
Oh,
board.
as public.
I think it's a good idea, for sure.
The select board
So
can come if they want.
you'll go back to the select board with it and say, we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
Or
I
try
mean,
to do it.
Austin will,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, there's a motion on the table, any discussion on the motion, do we want to, specify the list of people we said select board, not select board, school board? Do we want to specify, superintendent and
Business
business?
manager.
The ones we talked about.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do 3 or 4.
Whatever key players should be here.
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
Why do we want the superintendent there?
So that he hears our woes.
He comes to us.
I don't know if it makes sense, I'm not sure who, if I may, how the business and finance subcommittee is set up this year on, school committee, but I don't know if it makes sense to invite them, specifically them, as they, I think, are the kind of the drivers of the initial pass of the budget.
But we need to only tell our school committee the importance of what we've got.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm not sure if any of our school committee members are on business and finance. They might be, you know what I mean?
Right.
But because school committee is set up differently.
If they're not, is it pointless to speak with them? Almost.
Well, but they can
but
bring their.
But they can bring their concerns to their cohorts that are talking to.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to start with who we've elected. Have to start there.
I think that's
We
correct.
call in the full.
Well, that's why I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a discussion with them without the superintendent there first.
I guess, I don't know.
Well,
I
so,
don't, I'm just asking, I
Yeah.
don't really know either, but.
and
I do
guess-
feel like the school committee first makes the most sense but I am up for either.
I think with the new superintendent, it's less contentiousness as it was in
And
the
I guess
past.
the other thing that I would have a concern about is it mean that we have to have one meeting for the school committee and another meeting for the superintendent on the same subject. When we could do it all at one
And
time,
you kinda need to have them all hear everything together, I think.
I think.
If I may, I don't know for sure. I know we've had this conversation and I honestly don't remember. Individual school committee members meeting, the school committee bylaws are weird. And as far as how individual members can operate outside of a full committee. And so that's the other consideration. Yes, they're elected officials and yes, they are elected by us. But the way the school committee bylaws are set up, they aren't always able to, I don't think, to operate.
Well, but it's not
Outside of
their
the committee.
meeting, it's our meeting, and it's only an informational sharing meeting,
Right.
us to them.
And so I think it
indicate-
needs to be very clear that it's an informational sharing meeting, and to that point, it might make
I
sense to
guess
have a
Austin can
superintendent.
figure out who we can legally and not legally
No,
invite.
we can have them there. I understand from their standpoint, and this is what we had heard before too, when we were down there. They can't commit to anything because they can't commit to something until the school committee votes on it. Just like
They can hear us out.
Just like, I can't
Exactly.
say, well, the finance board's gonna do X, Y, Z unless we vote on it.
Right,
But I can say my opinion is, or I can say we've discussed that, or we've voted on something in regards to it, if it's public record. They can listen to us, they gotta listen to what we wanna tell them is what we're talking about.
Well,
And bring the
they really-
information
they-
back.
Right.
They practically don't know where we are with this stuff. They don't know it's 1.5. They know that they're probably going to be an issue and the towns are gonna come back, but they don't know, we need to tell them.
It was part of the budget book.
And in
What's
the
that?
warrant.
It was part of the budget book.
You know, I understand that.
I mean, so to me, when you're sitting on the when you're sitting on the school committee, you should know where we are financially. I'm just saying.
But do they?
The town of Rutland. So the town, they should know where the town of Rutland is with the town's budget.
Sure.
Well, see,
And the other thing is his door's open. All you have to do is call him,
no,
he'll
and
make an
I
appointment.
understand that, but it's not like that's the only thing that the school committee is dealing with. I mean, if I'm on the school I'd never be on a school committee, but if I was on the school committee, I could understand that they're very busy with other stuff. They won't deal with this stuff until it gets to the very end anyway. So I think it's important for us to be able to just express ourselves.
I agree.
Yeah, I think there's value in bringing the administration, by the way, rethinking that. It's definitely worth it, just from a fact of keeping it a partnership as opposed to we're figuring out our thing and then we'll let you know where we are. It's, it feels like more of a partnership if we include
So-
them as much as we can.
We can ask. They can say no.
So let's invite the whole town, we'll
Yeah.
go from there,
That's right.
including administration.
No, because it's a public meeting.
Yeah. We'll put it on TV.
Tommy. Alright, we need a.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
No, we gotta vote
We
on
gotta
the
vote on
motion.
that.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, sorry.
that's right.
Did we vote on that? We didn't vote on that, right?
No, not yet.
I didn't think so. Okay, all those in favor of this giant meeting that we're gonna have with school committee and administration and possibly everyone else in town?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Negate the everyone in town part.
Should you just call it town meeting?
We can't afford it.
No, we don't have the postage.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we do though.
You do now.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Adjourned at, whatever time it is right now, 7:39.